Yeah? What's happening with the tail? Tail is a bit, yeah, but that could be just worn tail feathers. So the tail, if it's a nice fresh tail, it should be, it could be a nice fork-shaped, so you'd say black kite. But we haven't got that, so you can't be certain based on that. So, have a look at the wings. What is it about the wings that are telling you? First of all, which part of the wings are white? No, not the secondaries. See where the wing changes just here? So this is primary number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, back there. So the top part of the primaries, and by the time you move into the early primaries, it's not a window of white, it's bars. So we're getting bars in the early primaries and then solid white at the top end of the secondary primaries. But the coverts are darker.
What page are those wings on?
At the very back.
Well, those are 143.
160.
Oh, here we are.
Yeah, those two.
Go for black kite.
Go for black kite? Black? So the key point is we're not looking for those things that can lead to mistakes. If the tail's not quite right, it could be a black kite, but we've got to look at the other things. If we just assume a tail, it might be a forked tail because it's growing new tail feathers. And the middle two start first. They drop out. They're called retrices. Most birds have 12 tail feathers. So if your middle two drop out, you're automatically going to get a fork. The two new ones are going to grow from the base. So don't just stop with that one key feature that you're locked into. If it's a black kite, you've also got to check a few other things if you can. Yeah. What's the problem with most birds? Where's the sun? Above them. How many of them turn up and give you that beautiful colouring under the wing? You've got to work on the minimal input. And again, that's the ideal picture. What you're looking at here is the reality. Black kite? Well, they're a smaller one. If you're up in, you got it right, but we need a reason. Because it looked right, yeah. And if, yeah, well, it depends on how it holds its wing. If you go to the black kite section on page 144, how does the black kite hold its wings? They're drooped, they're down. They're not a V up, they're not flat, they're actually down a little bit. Okay? Yeah, you are. So the biggest, trickiest part with a black kite is separating it from a whistling kite. But a whistling kite, its first four primaries, these four here, they're white. They're all white. It's not a white window out in the outer primaries. And a whistling kite, when you hear a whistling kite, so here's our whistling kite.
The tails are totally different.
If I turn it on. If you've spent any time on the Murray River, you'll know that call. So that's the whistling kite, and here's the black kite. It's got that ping, but it doesn't go. Here's more of a trill. We get black kites on EP. We get whistling kites now and then.
Wandering. I've got some grandson play cricket.
Yep.
Oh, what if we spotted that eagle? He said it wasn't an eagle, it was a black kite.
There's a black kite.
Got told.
Okay, let me just stop that. Okay, first one, black kite. Very shadowy. Tricky. Yeah, he's interested in me. What's the problem? The light's terrible. Yeah. There's a pattern there. Can you see much of it?
You see a bit of the bar.
There's a little bit of lighter wing there. You can see stripes across there. You can see the upper wing. Tail, a bit more distinct. Yeah? What do you reckon it is? Same bird. Yeah. It really fascinates me how different the same species can look. And you've got to learn to deal with that variation, because that variation overlaps other species. So getting to tease apart it all is tricky. How the bird holds its wings is one clue. Where it's doing and how it's flying is another clue. You know, is it high up? If you're up north, you'll see thousands of these together, mixed with whistling kites. What sort of call are they making? What sort of habitat are they over? You'll see differences and learn differences that'll help you to understand that that's a black kite, but it's different from a whistling kite. And like we look at a human, if you were going to select a human being to stick in this bird book, human, Homo sapiens, which human would you stick in this bird book? Perfect specimen. Here we have it. Okay? We compare our humans to this one. And if it looks like that, it's a human. If it doesn't look like that, it's also a human. So there's our challenge. If we're selecting the bird that we're going to draw the picture of, which one do we put in the book? And how do we show the variation, the full variation that's available? And how do we show the old ones versus the young ones? And the old feathers versus the young feathers? Okay? The one they would have put in the book of me when I was 20 is very different from the one they put in now. It's changed. I'm sure the one at 20 wasn't nearly as handsome, but it's...
The birds go bald too, right?
Birds have all sorts of problems with their feathers. Their feathers are protein, so bacteria are sitting on them, breaking them down. The sun's radiation breaks them down. They are changing colour all the time. As you go through the season, a bird's feathers start to grey off all around the edge, and you start to see patterns on the feathers that weren't there when they had brand new ones. There's a whole lot of things going on that we need to work at. If you think you know what it is, tell me what age group or what sex it is or what type it is.
White wolf, brown falcon.
Nearly, but not quite. Brown falcons are highly variable. If you look at all the different sorts of brown falcons, it's quite fascinating. Nah. Tail's all wrong, and the breast is all wrong. No. No. It's in that group, it's in that falcon group. It's got this picture here shows you many of the varieties, not all, of the brown falcon. I'll bring it round. So, you've got all sorts of dark and light birds. They go from blondes to brunettes to redheads. There's all different sorts. It's juvenile, yep. Not a peregrine, no. No. See the tail and the breast is white? So that's got... They're all brown falcons.
Oh, right.
That's a black falcon.
Oh, okay.
So
it is a brown falcon.
Yeah. They're highly variable though. Yeah, so this is the Hansard book. These, you've got to go. Sleep well, sir. Sorry?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I've got to know that yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, they're quite variable, quite different.
Yeah.
And on your phone,
Yeah, we do.
yeah, quite lovely. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. So here's your brown falcons, the variability of them.
How do I get him? I got him there.
Yep.
How do I get him here?
Now this is the falcon page.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, yeah, be over here. Yeah, here we go.
But
Brown falcon. Yep.
the problem with this,
Yep.
so that's the variability of the brown falcon.
This is what I'm looking at here. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a black falcon.
Yep. Yep.
So the difference is they don't have that tear.
Oh yeah. Yep. They haven't got the. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
they don't have. They have the one going backwards through the eye, but they don't have the tear. Okay. So it's a brown falcon. It's a juvenile of a brown falcon. The thing that makes all the brown falcons identifiable is that tear. The black falcons have the black behind the eye, but the dark morph of the brown falcon, it's quite dark all over. It's got that tear, but if you look at the black falcon, it doesn't. And then if you look at how the falcons fly, the brown falcon takes a big, deep wing beat, whereas a black falcon, it's short and sharp, not as deep. And when you look at how they hold their wings when they're gliding, the brown falcon's much more upright. Can you see the brown falcon in profile? The black falcon is much flatter. Brown falcon, black falcon. It's a subtle difference, but you'll see it. Either they're flying and it's a big, deeper wing beat. Black falcon's faster. Black falcon, they think, is probably the fastest, even faster than a peregrine. So it's a big, powerful bird.
We had a lot of fun when we were camped up in Northern Territory, and we just get little bits of food, throw it up in the air, and they'd come and just swoop.
Take it out. And was that a brown falcon or black? Yeah. 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 I watched a peregrine on the Grampian Ranges just in front of me one day. It came flying through and did a loop-the-loop in front of me, and you could hear the air ripping. It was just, yeah, it really was. They Bok, yeah. Yeah. No, they're a big, powerful bird.
The black one.
Black one. Brown one's still powerful, but not as powerful. Not as. No.
Oh, yeah, that's a letter.
How do you know it's a letter wing? Which feathers are black in the letter wing kite? Coverts? Coverts? And primary coverts? Have a look at the picture. Which feathers are black under the wing
Well, I'm looking at
in a black-shouldered kite?
I'm looking at a wing kite here.
Oh, on the shoulder.
So letter wing kite, yeah, and the black-shouldered.
Yep.
So if this was a black kite, these would be black-shouldered kite, and some of the primary coverts would be black. Can you see the two lots of feathers? This guy, it's got black all through the underwing coverts. go to your picture
Yep.
and we need to start learning those words. So, primary coverts and the secondary coverts, the marginal coverts, the allula, primaries and secondaries. They're the key words for this week. With the Raptors in particular, really important.
Primary and secondary.
The primary and secondary feathers, and then the coverts for each, and then the marginal coverts. We'll learn, there's more detailed names, but we'll get onto that next week.
So the black ones there are called coverts.
Yep. Now, have I given you these two sheets? Yep. So those, those first layer of feathers that cover off on the primaries and secondaries, they're the coverts. They cover over them.
So just looking at that, so you look at the top side of the next wing though, it seems to be darker.
Yes. So the top of the wing, we don't have the wing from above. There is in the main section? Yep. So go back to that main section. And the ring of black around the eye goes all the way around the eye. Now these birds are quite interesting. The letter-winged kite, which is letter-winged because it makes an M if you look at the wing when it's held up, or if it's upside down, a W. That's where the letter comes from. The letter-winged kite, it's not diurnal. It's not usually active during the day. It's crepuscular, which means it's active at dawn and dusk, and it's active into the night. It's one of the few raptors that's active into the night. It's also one that's disappearing. We don't know why, but it's disappearing. Its main habitat's Central Australia, and we used to get them onto the southern coast with big booms when rat numbers went high into the central region. You'd get a boom over 2 or 3 years of these letter-winged kites, and they'd disperse out into the coastal regions. So we'd see them for a while and then they'd disappear. But they're starting to disappear out of the middle as well, and we don't know why.
When the rivers flood, when the Cooper flooded, it was full of rats.
Yep,
Yeah.
and you get that boom of birds and lots of rodents and that sort of thing, and then the raptors breed up, and over the next 2 or 3 years they do really well. And the letter-wings do that as well. Okay, so letter-winged kite, and a book I need to tell you about, if you really want to get into raptors and learn them, this is quite neat. He does things like this, which are invaluable. He'll cut the birds in half, and he's got lots of good pictures and lots of detail about all the different stages of each bird, the immatures, the adults, and all the intermediates. But if you compare the black-shouldered kite to the letter-winged kite, there's the difference. We've got the dark primaries and the primary coverts, and the black allula. The black allula and the primary and secondary coverts are dark. So you can see them side by side. They're pretty similar, but it's that difference. As you're driving along, 99% of the birds you see on Eyre Peninsula will be that. But keep an eye out. Every now and then you might be lucky. Okay? But you've got to look for that distinct difference. Don't drive off the road.
So I'm looking at the wing here, I'm looking at the underneath part, aren't I?
Yeah,
Under the wing.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. But the over at the top of the wing has the same sorts of feathers as the under. Yeah.
The letter-winged kite seems to have a black under its throat.
No, that's just the way he's oriented the bird. That's the wing. That's the top of the wing. But the difference, if you are seeing them sitting, the difference is that there's a bit of black across the top of the eye, and here it goes right around the eye. And while you're spending 30 minutes arguing over whether it's a shadow or whether it actually goes all the way around the eye, when it flies off, just confirm that you got it right, because you're not really going to be certain until it flies off, unless it's sitting up there in the sunshine just showing you that perfect face. The other one that people can confuse, but not really, is the Nanking kestrel, but they're totally different under the wing tail. Okay. Start thinking about the feathers. Which ones are white?
Whistling kite.
Which feathers are white?
Some of the primary.
Which primaries? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See that notch there? First 4 primaries. 1, 2, 3, 4. The outer 6 are all black. There's no window. The tail is long, which is useful for the little eagle. Shorter, squatter, square tail on the little eagle. And the little eagle has a white window that goes up through here as well. It includes those feathers. So we're aiming to tick off on all those underwing patterns. Rather than throwing a name at it, we want to be certain about the name we're throwing at it. Why? Why is that a certainty? If you were to write notes down that can convince me that you saw this bird, what would the notes be that you were writing down? You'd be saying, first 4 primaries are white, last 6 primaries are all black. Underwing coverts have lines of brown and white all the way along them. The secondaries are all blacky brown. Body is light, tail is long, and you're trying to get that sort of detail down. But you're being specific about it. You're not just saying the primaries have white in them. Which primaries? Where? What part of them? All happy it's a whistling? What do you notice about the wing profile for a whistling kite? If you saw it flying straight at you, what would it look like? What's the book show you? Quite flat? Is it up or down? Have a look. It's not exactly level, is it? It's slightly arched. Yep, slightly arched and back. So you're seeing that slight arch. That means the wrists are continuing down rather than holding up. Later on we'll talk about a few birds. When you look at them in profile, you see that. You see a distinctive shape. Or you see that. They're holding them high when they're gliding. That's a very stable position. That's a very unstable position. If you're wanting to move quick, to dive and change direction, you put your wings down lower. That's much more stable. Good for gliding along. They could well. It's been a hard day at the office, you know. I love the way a galahs come in at night. Have you ever seen the galahs come in at night? They'll come in quite high and flat, and then they sort of down, and they just sort of plummet sideways. Yeah, I don't know what you call. Anyone fly here? What do you call that when you drop your wings sideways like that? Could be.
Greg, I just shared on Friday I was out swapping my 3 weeks ago dive bombing quail.
On the ground, yeah?
And they were getting them first.
They were.
And they were just holding their wings back when they were dropping.
Yeah.
About 3/4.
Yep.
And then they just go zoom straight on them.
Yep. Quite spectacular.
And then they
With the wedgie, have you ever seen how they hit a bird? They hit and grab, and most of us that would just rip out. But they've actually got these brake pads on their tendons and ligaments, and the brake pads actually grip and hold, so that when they hit the animal and hold, actually lock onto it, and it can't tear backwards. Yeah, it's
these are actually hitting them, just dropping straight on.
straight on them. They weren't
What
grabbing.
they do is that they're quiet on the stubble and the clearer stuff. Then obviously they know there's hawks around, and then they just hit. But obviously the eagle had
Already
been
spotted
on
them.
and they just sit there frozen, and they would just come down plump. No, they would have got 3 or 4 or 5.
And actually just grabbing them.
Yep.
Yeah. And when people work with the wedgies, if they actually lose the trust of the wedgie. They actually have to give up working with them because their talons are so strong they can crush the bones in the forearm. So you have a wedgie sitting on your arm. If the wedgie comes not to like you, someone else has to take over as their keeper.
You don't have arms anymore.
No. Yeah. You notice when your arm starts to break in the middle, it's time to move on. Before that happens. Anyway, so whistling kite. If we look at the underwing patterns, we've got that nice set of feathers there that are white. Compared to the little eagle, we'll look at them in a minute, the light morph. Notice that it's not just the first four, it goes into the top, the back half of the rest of the primaries.
The different tail shape.
Yeah, the little eagle is quite a short, stubbier tail, it looks, compared to... Yeah, versus bars. Yep, good. With the Brahminy kite, we don't get them here, so you don't have to worry about that. The black kite, that amount of white there is quite subtle. It's a shading rather than a solid white. And of course the black kite, in a nice healthy tail, it's got that distinct fork. They used to call them fork-tailed kite, which I think is a much more apt name. But the name that accepts... If it's got a fork tail, it's a black kite, yeah. Okay. Spectacular bird.
The sun comes right through him.
Out in the desert. Sadly, this one's not mine, but you've got to be lucky to get one of these birds to fly over the top of you. They're usually pretty scared. With most of our raptors, was actually bred raptors that move away from humans and abandon their nests. For a while there, we were shooting about 200,000 wedge-tailed eagles a year. And if you're a wedge-tailed eagle that flies back to your nest after a human's visited, the chances of you flying away are pretty low. And there's a lot of selection for birds that abandon their nests. And we've done that for a long time. And in the end, we now have most of our raptors, if you approach their nest, they'll abandon their nest. So if they've got eggs or young in them, they won't come back. Some do, but most don't nowadays. And that's because of the selection of pressures that we've applied to them. No. 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 Black-breasted. Which feathers are black? Which feathers are white? Which ones? 6 of them. Look at the primaries. They're almost forming a square. Most of the birds, their wing comes to a point. If you're looking at a falcon, the first two feathers, the last two primaries are the longest. In this one, those outer feathers are all pretty much the same length, and that's creating quite a square wing. Then you've got that really distinctive black breast.
So what are we looking at? A black-breasted buzzard?
Black-breasted buzzard.
Oh, I just said that.
You did, okay. Yep, well done. Now, these birds, they haven't been recorded on our peninsula, but if you look at their distribution, they came right down past Port Augusta. If you don't know your birds, it's very easy to say this is a wedgie. They're quite distinctive, but if you don't know your birds, it's very easy just to
You would think it was a wedgie.
just look. Yeah, it's a wedgie.
Yeah.
You're not seeing quite the wedge tail,
Yep.
but you're seeing that big bird. It's got a 1.6 metre wingspan. Can you see that on your description?
Probably would be
Very
on
top
the-
on the right. Yep. Is it 1.6 it gets up to? 1.5? Yep. The wedgies, the males are 1.8, 1.9, 2 metres. The females go up to 2.3 metres.
Yeah,
So they're
females larger.
so with these guys, they look a big bird in the sky, and it's easy to confuse them unless you start to question what you're looking at. I'm hoping one day someone who's done this course will finally detect one up in the Gawler Ranges or something like that. Because
We saw one in the Northern Territory.
yeah, if you go up through the centre, up towards Darwin, you'll see them all the way up. They're quite common. But as we come south, they just disappear out. But they do come quite far down in good years. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone records one day. Yep.
Are they common in the Gawler Ranges?
No.
No, they're not.
No, they're not recorded there yet, but
Okay.
they're common just to the north. So the question is,
When you say north of Kingunya or north of
Boomer or somewhere like that.
okay, yeah, north of
Yep.
Gawler Range, yep.
if you look at that map there, you'll see they come right down, right across
okay.
the top of that region, through the top of the Flinders, through the Gammons, down through there.
Not so much
Yeah.
Not very good.
But who knows why they don't come further across? Maybe we just don't see them very often. Okay. Everything you need to know. You can see these at 2 kilometres and immediately know what they are. You just got to see this one key feature. No?
The black-breasted buzzard.
Wings are a bit up, that helps. No, there's one feature that's critical. The white rump. The tail coverts. The upper tail coverts.
Not that one?
No, that's underneath. So we actually need to see the bird from above to pick this. Have you got a picture of the bird? And if you look on your bird book, it's drawn, but most people don't see it because it's hard to see. It's worth agonising over it a bit because you'll now know, I'm sure. It's one of the harriers. Yeah. No, juveniles don't tend to have the same white rump. The juveniles, if it's there, it's quite small, quite narrow. The adults have a very strong white rump.
The female, which is the one with the arrow above?
They both have, male and female, have the white rump. So you'll see a bird with a wing shape like that off in the distance, often quartering low over grassland or wetlands, swamps in particular as you move towards the south. And then you'll see a flash of white rump high on the back there. It's not the tail feathers, that's mostly dark, it's that white rump there, and you can see that kilometres away. You can be wondering, is it a spotted harrier, is it a swamp harrier, what is it? White rump, it's a swamp harrier, end of story. You all got your swamp harrier? Yeah.
What is it?
Swamp harrier. So if we go back here, back into the harrier section, 155, or gone too far. You can see that white rump there.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And in flight, can you see it just
Yes,
join
there. Yes, I
Yeah.
can. You can.
Yep. The juvenile swamp harrier can have a darker rump. It can be just a dirty band. It can be hard to pick. And then you need to look at that underwing pattern. But the adult swamp harrier, if you see the white rump, that's the end of the questioning. You know what it is. And you'll see them all over EP, quite common. We also get the spotted harrier. So you need to be aware that they're both there. But the spotted harrier, as soon as it turns up, you'll see the beautiful patterning and you'll know it. The sea eagle, yep. Well done. Sub-adult. The white-bellied sea eagles, you can see the juvenile there is quite dark. They can take up to 13 years to get that full adult plumage, that beautiful white and black. And some of them can do it in 3 years. It just depends on how good their food source is, how good they are at hunting. And in the end, they can be quite old before they finally have that final molt into the full adult plumage. So it can be quite slow getting. Okay. Yeah. They're a big bird. They eat pretty much the same as a wedgie, and they will move inland a ways, but they will also take the fish. And you get them, if you've been down to Greenlee Island or Rocky Island right down south, they're out on there, and you'll see, you'll see these beautiful big nests that might have been there when Flinders came through, quite old ancient nests. And it amazes me out on Greenlee Island, what's that, 80 km south of the mainland, and you've got a nest of sticks out there. How'd they get there? How'd they collect all of those? Driftwood, yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, as they slowly shift from that juvenile through to the adult plumage, you get a gradual change in the wing colour and the coverts colour, but it's a slow, gradual change. White-bellied seagull and an immature. If you look at the wedge-tailed eagle and the white-bellied sea eagle, the juveniles, they can look quite similar. The tail's not as long and as big a wedge, but it is slightly wedge-shaped, just shorter. And you get more white in the wing. So you do need to look twice, because both the wedgie and the sea eagle hold their wings up like that.
Are they similar size?
Look at the wingspan. Your sea eagle's a bit smaller, up to 2 metres. So the bigger wedgies are bigger than the bigger sea eagles, but there's an overlap in the middle. Yeah, yeah. The sea eagles and the ospreys in South Australia, their populations plummeted over the last 10 years. The osprey population's probably about 50 pairs now in all of South Australia, and Eyre Peninsula is the last really key habitat. There used to be a lot of... You've done very well. They used to be quite common on Kangaroo Island. In fact, 5 years ago they were very common, but they've plummeted in the last 5 years, at least a half.
Every year they've got young ones.
Yep. Yep. That's good.
And they don't change the nest. They change once, so they only win a couple of Ks, get right in the foot.
Yep.
And they're going back to the rest of the nest.
They're highly susceptible to the impact of humans, particularly where you get a human on the ridgetop above their nest. They will abandon their nests, and that's the key driver of their decline. So in the last 5 years, the big thing that's changed on Kangaroo Island, along that southern coast of Kangaroo Island, has been the development of a whole lot of tourism facilities and aeroplane use of the area, and that's possibly the reason that's caused that decline. There's no other real obvious reason, but if a human being walks regularly along the top of the cliff face within a kilometre of either side of the nest, they will often abandon the nest. So you get a dropped reproduction rate. It's the same for the sea eagles. So what we're trying to do is develop our walks or our tracks that loop in around the nest and then come back to the cliff, so that we actually just give them a bit of space.
So you've been out here to Cummins Monument, where they have where that rock is out the sea out here, the sea nest on that.
Yes,
It's out
yep.
here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tourists coming there, but is that far enough away not to worry them?
Well, if they're staying there, it is. Yeah. But if people go out and climb the pole or whatever, then that's usually what drives them away. And yeah, it doesn't take much. Some are a bit more tolerant than others, but yeah, we've done a lot of rapid selection for birds that abandon. You know, if you don't fly away, you get shot. That's the end of you. No more. They are. Yeah. All of our animals are protected, unless they get nominated onto a particular list, and then you can apply for permits to shoot them. So yeah. There's some really good research on all of that. We can have a chat about that one day. If you look at the average wedgetail feeding its young on a nest over the 20 weeks that they're breeding, they bring in about 200 rabbits to feed their young in that 10-15 weeks of breeding. And that 200 rabbits, 12 to 14 rabbits eat one dry sheep equivalent. So each wedgie you've got during that 10-week period, it's allowing you to run 12 to 14 extra sheep. So there's an interesting balance between what they take away and what they give. Notice this has got the same sort of patterning as that young sea eagle. But that brown through the eye, where's it go? Up around the back of the neck like a collar. Yep. When you see a wedgie fly, it's got that big uplifted wings. The sea eagle does that. If you're seeing one of these guys come along the coastline, you'll see this really distinctive wing pattern. They hold their wings in a very different fashion. They don't do that. They fold it up like this, and you'll see that really distinct pattern.
That picture that throws you off, though, it makes you think that it's holding them up like really high.
Yeah, so it's in the starting to drive down in its wing beat.
Did you say this was the eastern osprey?
Yeah, they for a while split it off from the other ospreys in the world, but there's since been a questioning of that. So
we only have one in there.
yeah, the osprey. So for about 10 years, it was suggested that they were genetically distinct, and they investigated that a bit more, and the leaning now is that they're probably interbreeding, so they're not a separate species with the other ospreys of the world. So, eastern osprey. If you see it catch a fish and fly with the fish, it holds it straight, and you'll see it holding it in a line as it's flying it along, so that it doesn't create wind resistance. Yeah, I guess if you're holding it like that and you fall into the water, there's a quick learning curve there, and straighten it up. There are different wing patterns. That lack of a window, but the size is quite different. And then the way they hold their wings is different. So you get that distinct versus the uplifted primaries, that distinct folding down of the primaries. Sorry, yeah. They've both got that band around the neck, but the way it goes up over the back is different. Okay.
That's not a lizard one. Yeah, black shouldered white one. Black shouldered white. Yeah, because it hasn't got something under the eye. Yeah.
Hasn't got the black under the eye?
That's right.
Yep, so it hasn't got the I've just washed my face with eyeliner sort of look. It's only the top of the eye. It's not all the way around the eye.
Orange feet. It's got orange feet.
Orange feet.
They're darker on these ones than on the little white parrots.
Okay.
They've got very bright orange feet and those ones got brown.
Yeah.
Got the red eyes.
But just if you are trying to identify it based on those few characteristics, wait till it flies off just to verify. Because, yeah, it's a black-shouldered kite, and they're the ones you'll see most of the time. But hopefully every now and then you might see a leatherwing, if you're lucky.
Is that a young one?
Not that I would think of. The young ones are much browner. Look at the patterns under the wings. So, which part of the wings have the barring on them? Secondaries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Secondaries are barred. The primaries are white with a black outer on the last few primaries. The underwing coverts are white? No. No. Look at the tail feathers. You should be on those last 2 pages, scanning down those last 2 pages. No, because it hasn't got the really dark. No. What's wrong with the square-tailed kite? How much brown is there? Is the square-tailed kite? Which ones of the coverts are brown? Most of them. There's only a thin white strip at the very base of the coverts that's white. So the square-tailed is brown right through. Yeah? No. With the swamp harrier, it's not nearly as white as that, and you don't see that barring in the same way. The little eagle.
Is it a Nanking kestrel?
No, it's about 3 times as big as a Nanking. It's a little eagle. Yeah, have a look at the little eagle. Can you see the barring through the secondaries? Yeah? Can you see the width of the white in the underwing coverts? And the very brown in that leading edge of the coverts? And then there's a white window in the primaries, and then the outer primaries are black. And the tail?
So that's what you're calling that?
Yep. So is it the light morph, the pale morph, or the dark morph? The pale morph, yeah, that light morph.
So I wouldn't have picked it in my book that it's a little eagle because my colours are much darker.
Yeah, so the little eagle's highly variable, and the dark morph is trickier to pick, much trickier. This is the easier one. Yeah, so it's quite a big bird, but it's not a big eagle, it's a little eagle. You get them across EP, yeah. Okay. If I compare little eagle to the black kite, We don't get that barring down through the secondaries, and the tail doesn't give us that nice fork. If I compare it to the black-breasted buzzard, these dark morphs are the challenge. Okay, the light morphs are quite easily picked, but the dark morphs, you're still getting that barring through the secondaries. It's just a bit different in those primaries, and you don't get the white in the coverts like you do with the light morph. So the big difference is the colour of the coverts. All good? Yep. Okay. No. No, not a falcon. Okay. We need to start verifying things before we call out. We're not looking at the flying page because it's not flying. It's not giving us that information. So, yeah. Yeah. Now look at the sparrowhawk as well. What's the difference between the sparrowhawk and the goshawk? Yeah. Flying's not going to help you anyway. Yeah. The thing that's key with this is that square tail. That's the only real characteristic that you can pick easily. The long middle toe is tricky. Yeah. The sear. Yeah. Yeah. The challenge with these is the smallest one is the male sparrowhawk. The female sparrowhawk's bigger, but it's about the size of the male goshawk. And the female goshawk's bigger again. So if you see a big accipiter, which this is the genus this belongs to, it's probably a female goshawk. If you see a really small one, and that's quite distinctively small, it's probably a male sparrowhawk. But in the middle, you've got all sorts of challenges. If you're trying to pick them on the barring, on the eye colour, on the sear, anything like that, you're not going to do it. If you look at the tail, the squareness of the tail, S for sparrowhawk, is a square tail. If it's got a rounded tail, G, like a G, it's probably a goshawk. And that's the real key difference. But most of the time, unless you get a good look at it, and you've got a relative idea of the size, the tail is the only thing that you're going to be able to use. So be prepared to write down just accipiter. You don't know if it's a goshawk or a sparrowhawk. So you actually have to be quite confident to say, I don't know, until you've got your key clues. And then you can go from there. Okay? The tricky part about the tail is if it's in tail molt, or if it's got the tail fanned out. They both look the same if they're fanned out. It's only when the tail's nice and relaxed. Yeah. Primary's up a little bit. Bit down. I don't know. It's actually really interesting to look at the raptors of the world And the goshawks and sparrowhawks, the section on that is quite scary. We only have a couple, but when you look at what's found across the world, there's lots of them. They all look really, really similar. Quite.
So you would never recognise that by looking at that.
No, not on the wing. You've got to go back and look at it. Look at the sitting bird. The thing about on the wing is it's got a square tail.
Yeah, I'll pick that out. But
So if you look at the tail, if it comes down and it's sort of rounded, that's your goshawk. That's the rounded part of the G. If it comes down and it's pretty much square, that's your sparrowhawk.
One that we used to call these little hawks, chicken hawks.
Yes, goshawks and sparrowhawks, that's the common name, yeah. And you get both here, so you need to look.
I've seen them in the school, I don't know which one, but it's some brown, but I've had one of them come in and try and steal my chickens, but actually didn't get one.
Yep, they will. They'll give it a hard time. If you look at that underwing pattern and that body pattern, you're not going to pick them apart, not easily. The size you can pick, the tail you can pick, but when the tail's fanned out, it's not so easy. Okay? That square versus a rounded tail is pretty important.
The brown falcon, so it's got a bit more white on its neck as well as straight.
Yeah, the brown falcon, very different behaviour, very different wing pattern, and you see it in different parts of the habitat. You will see them hovering. You also see them in a dive and other things, but yeah, different way in which they attack animals and different animals that they attack as well. A lot of your goshawks and sparrowhawks sort of sit in trees and they pounce down on things flying past. They're the ones that most often create that alarm call that you hear as lots of honey eaters or something give the alarm calls, particularly in the suburbs and around towns. These are a big, powerful bird. If you hear them, look at the size of their wingspan. Sorry, wrong one. Yep.
I guess the rest of it might be a male, because the stripes look very gold on its wing.
If you've ever had one fly over the top of you near a nest, they're pretty impressive birds. They really have a powerful presence. So you've got a bird with a 1 metre nearly wingspan, travelling 160 kilometres an hour, and you see it hit a pigeon, and that's their main food nowadays. A lot of the pigeons and galahs have replaced their original food. They just leave a puff of feathers behind and a broken body going with them. The width of that collar is really important. Keep telling them apart from the Australian hobby is tricky.
Well, the Australian hobbies look darker yellow or brown on the legs, whereas the peregrine is a lot.
Yeah, you don't often see the legs. They get tucked into the feathers as they're flying along. The pattern under the body is quite similar. But if you can get a good look at the head and the size of the mask, it can often help you. If you get a good look at the eye ring, that'll help.
The yellow eye ring. Although the diurnal, not yellow on that. But no, then now it's been yellow or brown.
So peregrine, worldwide distribution. The ones in South Australia do something quite interesting as you head up north of Adelaide up through this country. They don't nest so much in cliffs. The ones in the rest of Australia tend to mainly focus on cliffs for breeding. Here they actually will nest into other birds' nests like crows and ravens and things like that. So they'll move into the stick-based nest rather than the cliff-based. But where you get quarries and that, you usually will get them. And along the coastline where you get bigger cliffs, you'll get them. And being able to compare the legs is tricky if you can see them. But when you get a look at the head, the extent of that white up through there can be quite useful. You can see the patterning, it's not dissimilar. Well, yeah, sort of. Yeah, and you're not going to be using the tail very much. Okay. Why?
Because of the black around the eye and the black on the tip of the tail.
Black on the tip of the tail, not so much the eye, because a lot of the falcons have that black in the eye. The black around the tip of the tail is important. The rest of the tail is white, and under the wings is pretty light. And if you look at the top of the tail, you can tell the difference between the male and the female. It's quite distinct. So the top of the tail in the male is really grey, and in the female it's really quite brown. And the head in the male is really quite grey, and the head in the female is quite brown. Can you see the greyness of that head? No, not a grey falcon, because grey falcons don't have that brown on the wing. See the brown on the leading edge of the wing? And the grey falcons don't have that black strip around the tail. What are we thinking? No, I didn't say that. So, Nanking kestrel. Yeah. Grey on top. If you see them gliding, they have a really, really flat wing. It's almost dead flat. You can pick it a long way away. And they do that beautiful hover. They sort of prop up and hover. And you'll see them sitting still, directly drop down onto a mouse or whatever. They catch a lot of grasshoppers and that on the wing. They'll be flying around and you'll see them catch something, pull up and catch something in the air, and then they'll fly along and munch on it, throw the bits away. Are there? Okay.
There is, yeah. I noticed that in the shed.
That one? Gives you an idea of how much bird is really there. There's not much to a bird.
No.
They're mostly feathers.
Well, that's the same too.
That's the same.
Yeah, because of the black.
Can you see the allula? The thumb. They use it at particular times. So it's got a few feathers. Can you see its little thumb? Yeah? So thumb, and then it's got its fingers, and then the primaries coming out. But there's not much to them. They're quite a small bird, really. Lots of feathers. Yeah, in that wingspan. Body length? 30-35. So that's if you lay it flat and its bill to tip of its tail. The Nanking kestrel? What about this guy? Identify the feathers. Which ones are which colours? Remember, the primaries come off the wrist. Can you see where the wrist is? Okay, you've got all those primaries quite distinctive. The parts of the primaries near to the wing are white. Thank you, sir. Wasn't switched on. Lucky to get as far as I did, really. We're all good. Black-breasted buzzard. Well done. So, black-breasted buzzard, go and have a look at it in flight. Remember, it had the black outer primaries, the white inner. The secondaries are darker. You've got the black breast. The reason it looks so mottled, it's a juvenile halfway through into an adult plumage. So it's in the pre-basic molt. It's going into its basic adult plumage. No. Ah, that's the logo for Natural Resources Eyre Peninsula. Well, the thing is, it comes right across the top, and in the wetter seasons it comes down into Victoria. No one's recorded it this side of the Flinders Ranges, but maybe it is. Just no one's recorded it. This might come. Yeah. Have a look. You never know. All happy with black-breasted buzzard?
Black-breasted buzzard.
Hobby? Good man. Well done. Yeah. Can you see the length of the primaries and see how short the secondaries are? These are the big long primaries. And then you come up into these very short feathers. So when it opens its wing, it's a long, thin, sharp wing. The length of the primaries is just about the length of the tail feathers. Yeah, it's very similar in that black to the different race. So, but very similar to the peregrine. It's just dirtier, and it doesn't have that solid white band up through here like the peregrine does. It much wider. But yeah.
Looks like the ring goes around further on the peregrine wrap and like the peregrine wrap down and then it's got, you know, sort of in a line between the back of the eye and down the back of the shoulder.
Yep.
Sort of, what do you call it, you know.
Non-humorous.
How it stops there, whereas this one goes up around the back of the neck a bit more and sort of to a point. Doesn't look like it quite goes all the way around though. Looks like there's like a black line down the back.
Different races are different as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon it's like that one.
Okay. And look, I find these very hard to tell apart unless you get a good look at them.
Yeah.
If they're just flapping past really quickly, it's tricky. If they call, I played the call before, the peregrine's much stronger call, the hobby's much less powerful. I'll just give you a comparison again. So this was the peregrine.
That's a peregrine.
Yep, that's the peregrine. Strong, powerful call.
Do they only do that when they're flying, or they call?
They will call on the wing too.
Oh, isn't that, yeah.
This is the hobby.
Yeah, that's the one we hear off the aerial around home.
Yep.
It's more of a squid, isn't it?
It's not that powerful big bird sort of call. A little bit like it, but not the same. Okay. Got all sorts of things going on here. You can see the banding through the secondaries. You can see the banding through the outer parts of the primaries. The window. What do you notice about the head? A bit of white, yeah. They used to be recorded quite regularly on EP, particularly around Big Swamp. There was a pair there for many years, but apparently they haven't been seen for quite a while now. Yeah. Yeah, the tails could be in a tail molt. You see that notch in the middle?
Yeah, that's what confuses me. I was but it's got those stripes on the end of the primary.
Yeah.
That's the best.
So we're trying to come up with more than one key feature.
And plus the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the other one I was looking at, but and a little bit of black here.
So square tail kite. Now, who didn't I have forms for people to fill out tonight? Who? 1, 2. So I'll just get your names in my. And if you could give me your email address as well. If you've got a better pen than me, that would be. If you could just give me your name, your email address, and a phone number, that would be really great. We've got about 4 minutes left, so I'll quickly run through the last few. We'll give you one more challenge. Just to compare the square-tailed kite, black-breasted buzzard. Notice the way the wings pushed forward. That's a useful clue. It's not about up or down, but if it's going over the top of you, is it swept back or is it pushed forward? Yeah. Then slightly different patterns, black fingertips versus barred fingertips on the primaries. Little eagle, the light morph. Again, you've got the white right through the primaries rather than the barring ending it. And the square-tailed kite and the black kite, I think they're quite different. But this one's a bit more challenging for you. When birds are sitting, you can find it really hard. So, no. And ones like this, you can have 4 or 5 people who really know their birds. They're sitting there with binoculars and bird books and they're arguing. And then the bird flies away and finally you get the solution, you know, if you're lucky enough to see it. But it's an eagle. It's a little eagle and it's tricky.
Meaning it's not a little eagle.
Do they also get called golden eagles, or is that something
That's something different. This is just a little eagle, yeah. It's not in Australia. Little eagle.
It is a legal eagle.
Yeah.
You said it. There is a kitty.
Yep. But you can see how tricky it is when all the characteristics are folded away. Okay, and the next one is that's brilliant. Thanks, Neil. Right, and Kim, did I get your details? You filled one? It was Vince. Vince, can I grab
Oh, no.
your details, sir?
I'll send an email when
You will?
yeah, all right.
That'd be
I'll
great.
I'll do that.
That would be good.
Okay. I didn't bring my glasses.
No, you're right. And there was no one else that I've missed? Ah, yes, that's right. Sorry, Les. Yeah, just name, email, and phone number if that's relevant.
Spotted Harrier.
Spotted Harrier?
You're right.
No, it's not a Swamp Harrier. It's a Spotted Harrier. Yeah. Yeah, you see the underwing,
Yeah.
the stronger barring. The way they behave is a bit different too. And then if you get that white rump, end of story. Or not white rump in this case.
No. For me, it was the distinct tail banding.
Yep.
And spotted belly.
Yep. There's the swamp and the spotted.
And its legs are orange as well. If you're out on the one that you have there.
Yep. It's a lot alike. That's why that white rump's so good. Okay. And you can see that white rump here. Comparison. Good. Okay, we just quickly to finish off. You know that one? Black falcon. It doesn't have the teardrop. So that's the key feature for a brown falcon, black falcon. And how they fly and how they hold their wings is different. Then, so there's the comparison. See the brown falcon's more up, the black falcon's more down. This guy, it's a goshawk or a sparrowhawk because the barring's all over, body and wing. It's got the round, good man. Rounded tail, goshawk. So a juvenile goshawk. I've seen these, the guy who recorded 800 odd species for Australia in 1 year swears they don't exist because he looked everywhere and didn't see them. But you get grey falcons around. Last one I saw on Eyre Peninsula was up above Paney Station in that little bit of habitat up there. But
What is that?
grey falcon, yep, beautiful bird, fast, active hunter, but a bird of the desert region, really in the hot part of Australia. Yep, you get goshawks over near Adelaide now and then, grey goshawks. There was one pair north of Adelaide for many years. I haven't heard of them lately. But their wing is much rounder. The falcon wing comes to the point, the goshawk wing's rounder. And then just quickly, the last two, our boobook owl. You know, the mopoke or boobook. Yep. No.
Is that what you call
Yeah, when I was a kid, that's what we called it. Oh, no.
No, that's not a mopoke. So I'll play you the boobook call. Yeah, we all know that one. Two birds calling together. If you play these calls, they'll come to you. Just be aware they can be a bit grumpy. Sit in a car with your window up. There, yep. And the last one is this guy, which is the barn owl. There's lots of birds look like barn owls. We fortunately don't have them here. But grass owls and a whole suite of other ones. If you're heading across past Port Augusta, across towards New South Wales, you really have to look hard. They're not barn owls most of the time. You need to actually...
I think I've only ever seen one of them in my life up at Coolidge.
They're quite common right across. So, really distinctive high-pitched call or a screech. If you're out camping and you're wondering what on earth that is, it's probably one of these.
So that's what that is.
Yeah.
Is that what you call, is that what we call a cat owl?
Could, yes. So an eastern barn owl, they used to be thought of as similar, as the same species as the barn owls in Europe and North America, but they're not. They're a different species. And here, native to Australia.
These things,
We'll look at them later, but yeah. And
what we call a cat owl night time is we'll start over here and we'll go over there. Right? You'll hear it. Is that you hear it up in the Gawler Ranges all the time when you're camping.
well, there's owl nightjars, there's spotted nightjars, and a whole lot of other ones that we'll look at. They have quite distinctive calls. They're not a screech like that. I'll just give you a quick nightjar call. There's all different types of nightjars, but if I play the spotted nightjar, very distinct. Yeah, out in the Mallee country, and this is the owl at nightjar. They have quite a few different calls. You'll hear this key owl all the time out through the Mallee country.
What's the one that you run? You hit hundreds of them in your head all like feeding up the middle of the road.
Well, they'll probably be the barn owl. Okay, look, thank you. Next week we'll meet somewhere first. If anyone has a little bit of bushland nearby that is along creek line or something, or somewhere where there's a little bit of native habitat, over the next 9 weeks we'll work and meet at different bits of habitat around the region, try and catch a different suite of birds.
Showgrounds, there's often some crested pigeons and then kookaburras.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a lot of different types of birds, so if we have anything that...
Yeah, and the other place would be at the golf courses, hundreds of different types of birds out there.
They
Yeah.
have those beautiful root wrens out there.
Are there bits that we could walk around at the golf course? Is there anywhere that has water birds nearby? Do you have sewage works? Just out the dam? So that might be a good place to meet for next week, and I'll send out a map and get a bit of detail.
Oh, no, just down here,
Whenever I think of
down
it,
around road, and you've got the school dam, the sewage dam, and the rec centre dam.
Okay, so we'll probably meet there at 5 o'clock, and then we'll be there for an hour, and then we'll come straight back here and get stuck into this stuff, if that works.
Where are we going?
So, what do you call the dam? What's the name of it?
Railroad, just at the edge of town.
Yep.
There's a school dam, the sewage dam, then across the road is two rec
There's a sewage system.
Yeah.
because the other one's actually called, like the one out that way is actually called the railway dam.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking out here.
Yeah.
Okay. And what road would it be on?
Railroad.
Railroad. Warrow. Okay.
Railroad.
From a sparrow, it's the P change that to a W.